Hello, and my name is McClain, and when I was coming in the church today, someone said, well, there's the pear man. And I don't know if you were here about a year ago, but I spoke and I brought and gave away some pears as a visual illustration in that sermon. And so you probably have found out by now that I usually use a visual. And so I've got a couple of buckets that I'll be using today that tie into my sermon. Around our house, we have a term called man-looking. My daughter really came up with that term. I'm standing, I'm looking in the refrigerator door, it's all wide open. I'm yelling to my wife, Rita, where's that leftover chicken Alfredo? And Rita says, it's right there. You're man-looking. You need to keep looking for. So 4 minutes later, I find it on the third shelf of the fridge. If it would have been a snake, it would have bitten me. Have you ever man-looked for your phone? I find myself walking around the house looking for my phone, which I left on vibrate. And I look in my pocket, it's not there. I look everywhere, and then finally I find it where I left it. Man looking. Have you ever looked for your lost keys? Running late for work, you're frustrated. You make a promise yourself, okay, from now on I'm going to put it on the hook. I had a plan, but I failed the plan this time. And I finally find my keys. I'm 10 minutes late for work. I'm man-looked. I think sometimes when I man-look, I'm really distracted by so many other things that my mind and my eyes, I don't see the things that are around me. Do you see what I see? Today's sermon's entitled that. The thesis of this title is that most of us are going through life man-looking. God says, don't you see what I see is right there in front of you. Today, I love the kids coming in. It's Palm Sunday. They're waving their branches. We celebrate the time when Jesus made his triumphal entrance on a donkey to Jerusalem. And all the people were looking. All the people of that day were man-looking. They were looking for political answers with their problem, kingdom, and Rome, and all these things happening in their world. They were man-looking. Political leaders come and go. Earthly kingdoms come and go. But Jesus said, let me help you see your world as I see it. I didn't come to offer shallow hope, but I came to bring heaven's kingdom to earth. This upside-down kingdom of our leader riding a donkey, fixing the huge problems of our sinful hearts and death. I'm bringing all of you, this is what Jesus said, I'm bringing all of you the hope of restoring us properly with God and his desired kingdom here on earth. People of Israel were man-looking. They couldn't see what God was seeing. So let me open up a scripture passage that we're going to be studying for a few minutes this morning. It's the time when Jesus took a towel out and washed his disciples' feet. Matter of fact, it sounds like you're going to be celebrating this same portion of Scripture this week as you celebrate Easter. In the Bible, the towel in the basin event occurred on the final night that Jesus was with his disciples, and they were sharing a meal together. The scene was recorded in 3 of the 4 Gospels. They were celebrating Passover. Jesus knew he was headed for the cross. And with all this going on, the disciples got into an argument over who was going to be the greatest among them. Here's how Jesus responded to that question. So he got up from the table and took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. And he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he had around them. And after washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, do you understand what I'm doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I've done to you. You see it? Nobody saw the dirty feet, but Jesus did. Nobody saw the dirty feet, but Jesus did. If you're going to be a follower of the servant Messiah, you've got to be a servant. Here Jesus is talking about becoming like him. He's talking about becoming a vital part of his kingdom. And it's an upside-down kingdom compared to the way the world thinks and sees. Who do you want to be when you grow up? I have a 10-year-old granddaughter. I ask her that sometimes. You know, who do you want to be when you grow up? The questions typically ask these young kids, but it could be very relevant for a 70-year-old. Do you want to grow up and be like Jesus? Do you want to do what he did? In all four Gospels, we hear Jesus describing his kingdom, which is this upside-down kingdom that he brought to earth. He said stuff like this, that's upside down. You've heard it said, don't murder. I tell you, don't hate. Don't seek revenge. Turn the other cheek. You've heard it said, love your friends and hate your enemies. You know what I say? Love your enemies. And even pray for those who persecute you. Let me tell you about my kingdom. And he looked over the whole crowd and he said, it's like these small children right here. They know about trusting me more than any of the older people here. The first will be last, and the last will be first in my kingdom. So if I'm going to grow up and be like Christ, serving is not optional. Serving is at the heart of the Messiah, and we must be there also. We must see what Jesus sees. Rita and I, we lived in one house over in Bethany for about 30 years, and a lot of the mornings I was able just to walk to work, and it was the same route. It was just about 3 or 4 blocks, and I was thinking about all sorts of stuff. I was thinking about turning in my receipts. I was thinking about the email. I was thinking about returning calls, all the things that I didn't get done yesterday I need to do today. And as I was walking, I saw on the porch for the very first time this elderly woman. And she kind of sat on the porch. She was in a chair, and she waved at me, and I waved back. And I said, that's interesting. I've really never noticed her before. And then when I got off work, I came down that same road later. The old woman was still there. I stopped to introduce myself, ask her a few questions. I found out that she was probably about 75. She had been an LPN for many years. I found out that the food that she ate, she had delivered from Barnes Grocery. And that was just kind of like a 7-Eleven store a couple of blocks from there. I noticed that she had no air conditioning at her home. She had no heat for her home. She had about 10 cats living inside the house, and then she fed another 20 cats living outside her house. Bathing had not been part of her weekly routine for some time. She never invited me in, but she was always open and friendly as we talked on the front porch. The exterior of the house was overgrown. Literally, it had not been mowed for 3 or 4 years. Eventually, I earned enough trust with her that I had some youth from the church, like this church. And we said, we'd like to come and help clean up your yard. And she said, okay. So we piled up the truck. We had probably around 200 trash bags that we filled up with just junk and trash that was around there. We brought our weed eaters in. We brought our edgers, our lawnmowers, and worked all day long. Here this need was. A person that I walked by her house for years, and I was man looking. And finally God showed me what he saw through his eyes, and we met the need. In our normal life, we'd prefer to be served, and we'd become so busy sometimes that we don't even see the opportunities around us to serve. Now let me insert this point about charity. I'm really talking about service. Now, charity sometimes can be good. Charity sometimes can be bad. There's a book out called Toxic Charity that talks about how sometimes we can do more harm with our handouts than good. And we need charitable organizations that are experienced in meeting needs in our community. But that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a life of serving. A life of serving is not going on a work and witness trip a couple of times in your life. It's not about sending a big check to the food bank. It's not about the guy on the corner slipping him a $5 bill as he begs. It's a life that comes out of spending time with God. And that time with God dramatically opens our eyes. And I know as I spent more and more time with God, he's opened my eyes. We can see opportunities around us a lot clearer when we're spending time with God. I had a friend by the name of Gary. We went to college together. I was the best man in his wedding. He was telling me a story. He'd become a medical doctor, and he'd taken a group of people to Calcutta, India, and they were going to do some volunteer work there. Mother Teresa had established this work ministering to the dying and the destitute. This is before she passed. And when they arrived at the ministry, they were divided into work teams. Gary's group, he was assigned to work in the house of the dying and destitute to relieve suffering. Gary tells this story. This is what he told me. We were greeted by Sister Priscilla, who graciously assigned our group to various tasks. And when she turned to me, I introduced myself as a physician from the United States. I put on the stethoscope around my neck. I knew this is some place where little or no medical attention was available to them. They were almost untouchable. This is the place that I was needed, is what he told me. Well, the lady said, "Follow me." And Sister Priscilla, with her soft British accent, said, "Enter the men's ward." And they walked through a large open room with rows and rows of cots. Patients on these cots would only be described as skeletons with skin on them. Some were in pain, too weak to fight their affliction, not even eat. And Gary said, to my surprise, we were proceeded quickly through that ward into the next. And it was a women's ward, a similar room filled with emaciated women whose eyes were vacant, unseen. But again, we passed through that room without stopping. Can it get any needier than this? So we entered a primitive kitchen, he said, where a simple lunch of rice was being prepared on an open fire. How odd, I thought. Why would we want a doctor in the kitchen? But Sister Priscilla led me through the kitchen, out the back door, into a narrow alley. What in the world am I going to find in an alley to do with my skills as a doctor? Sister Priscilla pointed out a very large pile of garbage in the alley. It smelled revolting. She said, "We need you to take this garbage to the dump," handing me 2 buckets and a shovel. The dump is several blocks down the street on the right. You can't miss it. And with a nod and a slight smile, she was gone. So he stood there, Gary, my friend, that was the doctor that was intending to come and take care of a bunch of patients, and he was given 2 buckets instead and a shovel. And he kind of stood there scratching his head, and he put his stethoscope in his pocket, picked up the buckets, and started asking questions. I was really hoping to come all this way to India to do something meaningful. It was mid-afternoon when he finished sweating profusely, smelling like the heap of garbage himself. He set the buckets and the shovel down. They were getting ready to leave, and Gary saw this little sign, a small sign, hand-lettered sign. It read this. It's in Mother Teresa's own words. We can do no great things, only small things with great love. Shoveling garbage that day was transforming to Gary. It was an act that demonstrated his love, not his talent. We can do no great things, only small things with great love. Today we're overwhelmed with needs in our world. What we see on TV and read on the internet, the Ukraine war, the war in Israel, the conflict in Iran, refugees, earthquakes, fires, disease, tsunamis, the growing number of homeless, those without jobs. Our teenagers are struggling with depression, mental illness. The number of unfixable people and unfixable problems kind of makes me feel overwhelmed. We have no idea where to start if we want to help. One quote that I think is important when it comes to service. Start serving with one person in the manner you would like to serve everyone. Start small. Serve one person with love. It's more about valuing than fixing people. It's more about including everyone than getting your gold star for your generosity. It's more about daily, healthy rhythm of living than a checklist of big compassionate events you attend. In God's kingdom, learning to practice serving others is more about relationships than it's actually about the acts of service. Small things with great love. A few years ago, I made friends with a young man from Africa over in the Oklahoma City area on the west side. And he needed to mow his lawn, and he had no lawnmower. And so he called me and said, can I borrow your lawnmower, Lewis? And I said, yeah. So we began this weekly routine. He would drive his car over. We would kind of fold up my lawnmower and then put it in his trunk, lift it in there together. He would go mow his lawn, and then after he's through, he'd bring it back to my house. We'd reverse it. We'd take it out of the trunk, put the handle back on, and I'd put it in my little storage shed. He called me one day after doing this for a few months, and he said, I hit something, a rock or a big stick, and I think I broke your lawnmower. And so I went over to his house and pulled the crank a few times. Blue smoke flew out maybe for about 2 seconds, and it died. We tried it again, and I said, I think the mower is dead. But don't you worry, Just help me put it in the car, and I'll take it home. And my plan was, as I was driving, I don't know if you ever had this feeling. I said, God, here I was generous with my lawnmower, let this guy borrow it, and now I'm going to have to buy a new mower. I'm going to have to save up money and look around, try to find a good deal. And I was kind of feeling sorry for myself. And so I said, let's just go check out and see what a new mower costs. I'll put the old mower in the trunk, and I'll just drive around, and we'll take it to the dump. But before I put it in the trunk, I said, one more time, I'm going to try to start it. And God just told me, he said, Lewis, I want you to remember this. As long as you share your stuff, I'll provide for you. As long as you share your lawnmower, I'll always give you a lawnmower. And so I took the handle, and I said, let me try it one more time, and I started it up. And the thing ran. The thing started running, and the blue smoke went away. And that was 3 years ago. It's not needed any repair. He's kept it going. And there's been times when God's given me opportunity to mow other people's lawns and to loan my lawnmower out. And I learned a lesson, a very, very important lesson, is that it's in our serving. It's in our loving in small ways that we're able to accomplish the big stuff that's important in God's kingdom. I've learned that probably the most fun thing I do each morning is get up about 30 minutes earlier than my wife, and I fix her tea just the way she wants it, hot tea, every morning. And when I bring it in there, it's the highlight of my day. I get to bring my wife some tea, and we start the morning talking together. Sometimes I love picking up an Arby's roast beef sandwich for a neighbor that lives down the street. Delivering that is probably some of the most fun things I do all week long. Sometimes I sit down with a homeless person and I ask what your name was and how old they are and where they grew up, and tell me about your story, where they went to high school. I love sending a devotional book. I sign it and said, I'm praying for you. And if there's someone in the hospital that needs some attention, it's just the little simple things of sending them a card or a devotional book that I have found when I open my eyes to see the things that God wants me to see. It's amazing what I see. Jesus prioritized serving the neglected. And that includes a lot of people all around us. Why don't we begin by asking God to give you his eyes this week, every day. I'm going to get up and I want to see what you see. I ask God, what is it that you see that's important? And let me join you in that. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come here. So today we're going to close this service, and I challenge you to open your eyes to see the small opportunities that God's going to give you, maybe no one else. He's going to give you to meet this week.
Sitting at the stoplight, he can't be bothered by the heart cry written on the cardboard in her hands. Oh, but when she looks him in the eye, his heart is broken open wide, and he feels the hand of God reach out through him. As heaven touches her, kingdom come, with every act of love. Jesus, help us carry you, alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. There's silence at the table. He wants to talk, but he's not able, for all the shame that's locked in deep inside. Oh, but her words are the medicine when she says they can begin again, and forgiveness will set him free tonight. As heaven touches her, we bring the kingdom come, with every act of love. Jesus, help us carry you, alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you. I said God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus, help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom. Oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus, help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come.
God's kingdom. He's made 1,000,000 doors, and you're one of them. And so this week, go out and do those acts of love, bringing God's kingdom into your world, and it will be wonderful. Go and be that door. You're dismissed.